Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili?
Present.
Foster?
Present.
Gilmore present. Byrne?
Present.
Lee?
Present.
Sampu?
Present.
Tangi?
Present.
Administrator Darcy Carley?
Present.
And staff member Kim Kavanaugh.
Present.
We are all here and accounted for. The floor is yours, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January the 9th, 2024, at 6:30 p.m. for the applications of Ronald Slobeck, Jean D. Barbieri, trustee. The hearing is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointments by sending email requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with the Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, please let the chair know if anyone is recording this meeting. Hearing none. This evening's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda, next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisements. Please send your checks to the Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participations as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed by the governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the hearing will be televised via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. 2, the real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom links 885-6213-6797 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. 3rd, the public can also email the comments to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. This hearing is the first one in 2024. Happy New Year. And we also have a new town council liaison, Councillor Charles Blooms, with us as well. Welcome. Do you want to say a few words, Charles?
No, I'm call me Charlie, please.
Charlie.
Yeah. That's all I have to say. I'm going to sit down. I'm listening.
Okay.
That's.
And thank you to Paula Snap, has been our town council liaison for the last few years. Thank you, Paula. Tonight we have one RDA. The first one is the Ronald Stopworth proposed sewage disposal system upgrade within 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within the riverfront at 46 Woods 149 Masters Mill as shown on the assessors map 77 parcel 24. Is Mike with us?
Yes, I am. Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So yeah, my name is Mike Pimentel with JC Engineering. And this project involves the upgrade of existing failed septic system for the existing single-family home over at 46 Route 149. What we have right now is a couple of existing septic tanks that feed sewage into an existing leaching system that is essentially touching the edge of a BVW, and it's within the riverfront. You can see it on the plan as a light blue. Yep.
Mike, just share the screen.
Oh, I don't have a screen to share. Is that okay?
We should see the plan. Otherwise, you're just looking at the. Just keep talking. It's kind of dry.
Can Darcy do it? Tom, can Darcy do it?
It will give me a minute.
Yeah, I prefer to bring up the plan and then you can talk and people can see what.
Okay, I apologize. I thought you folks can see it. I'm sorry.
You might as well keep talking because it's going to take me a minute. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, it's I'm almost done actually. But yeah, it's the existing leaching system is right up against the BVW. So, and it's in the groundwater too. It's a failed system. So what we're proposing to do is put in a new Title V septic system. The new septic system is going to be a septic tank with IA technology and UV disinfection. And then we're proposing a pump chamber that's going to pump the sewage up to a series of concrete chambers that's going to be farther away from the BVW as best as possible, just because there isn't a lot of space on the property. So we try to maximize it and still try to keep the minimum setbacks from Title V to property lines and to our house. So the new septic system is going to be a much better system than what's there now. Again, it's going to be IA technology with UV disinfection, with the concrete chambers that's going to provide over 5 feet of separation to the groundwater. The closest point of the leaching system to the BVW is about 41.5 feet. Like I said, versus what's there now, which is essentially the existing leaching system that's touching the BVW. So you can see it's a much better septic system than what's there now. If Darcy can zoom in, she can show you the rectangle where the existing leaching system is now. It's called it's labeled as EX-SAS. If you
Yeah.
Darcy, can you see it? Okay. So we tried to make the best of the the constraints of the property. As you can tell, it's not a large property. It's only about 12,000 square feet, and we are within a riverfront and within 100 feet of a BVW. We are providing erosion control down along the BVW line in the form of straw wattles, and we just think this is a much better septic system that's going to be much better for the environment. So we are going to be in front of the Board of Health in a couple of weeks. And then after that, the installer plans to make arrangements to install the system.
Thanks, Mike. And the IA system for this is a microfast system.
That is correct.
Yeah. So, okay. Question from the commissioner.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes, thank you very much for the IA system. It's much appreciated by the commission, particularly this commissioner. And I think this is a great plan. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, what's not to like? I mean, you've moved from 1 foot from the BVW to 41 feet, and you're putting in a nitro system. I think it's great. Good
John?
job.
Yep. John?
Yeah, as do I. But a couple of questions just for my education. You got a 1,500 gallon septic tank and a 1,000 gallon pump chamber. Is that normal to have? Why is the pump chamber smaller than the septic tank for those uninitiated in this as I am?
Yeah, what we have to do is we're just conveying the sewage 4 times a day into the leaching system. So if you break that out, it's only a 3-bedroom home, and that generates essentially 330 gallons per day. So if I open up my plan here, 330 gallons per day under 4 cycles, there's only 82 gallons per cycle. And so all you really need to pump to the sewage is essentially, I'm just looking at my notes here, I apologize, about 90 gallons or so. And so that pump chamber doesn't have to be as big as the septic tank, because first of all, we only need to provide a minimum of 24-hour storage in the pump chamber, which is 330 gallons. And then everything else gets used up to actually pump the sewage into the leaching system. Now, as far as how you size up a septic tank, Title V simply says you take the number of gallons that you're designing for, in this particular case, 330 gallons, and you multiply it by 2 for 200%, 2 days of storage. And that only equates to 660 gallons. But per Title V, the minimum requirement is 1,500 gallons, even though it's way oversized, but it is the minimum requirement per Title V.
Okay, so thanks, Mike. One more question, again, for the education of myself and probably other commissioners. What convinced the homeowner to put in this alternative septic system?
Well, to be honest with you, it was just my experience with you folks. I mean, if you're so close to a resource area like this, within a riverfront and within 50 feet of a BVW, we want to make a better system here than a conventional Title V system without IA technology. It's a very sensitive area resource wise, and we just felt like this was the best design for this property.
As the other two commissioners said, we really appreciate this. We wish more people would do it. It's great. And someday we'll maybe in a position of mandating these when it catches up. So thank you, Mike.
Yep.
And please convey that to some of the other consultants. Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the explanation. I don't have to explain this stuff. So I'll probably see you in 2 weeks. Any other question from the commissioner? Channel 18, any public comment on this?
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve this project as a negative determination?
Go, George, go.
Roll call.
Cavadilli,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu.
Enthusiastically aye.
That's unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
Good night. And then we have one NOI, Jean D. Barbieri, trustee, to permit a proposed seasonal pier, ramp and float for non-motorized use at 104 Great Bay Road, Barnstable, as shown on Assessors Map 093, Parcel 011. John?
Good evening, John O'Day from Sullivan Engineering Consulting. Happy New Year to you all. Here with me this evening is the property owner, Lee. I'll bring up a copy of the plan. This is about a 1.5 acre site on Little Island. We were before you a month or two ago for a little patio work outside the backyard. We are here this evening, as it was indicated, for a proposed non-motorized seasonal pier, ramp, and float. The structure will be sized and constructed pretty similar to all the others on this side of the island. This is the last property to go. As you can see up in the up above, we're actually a little bit shorter than the abutting piers, but it has been designed in accordance with all of the commission's regulations for piers. There's not enough water for boats, so this is a non-motorized, but we have extended it out to the allowable length, and what that does is gets us to a place where we can have 2.5 feet of water. I know the commission received some comments from marine fisheries and suggesting that maybe that could even be moved out further for additional water, but I don't think that would be in keeping with the commission's regulations and the other piers within this area. So we think that this is a good length for this site. It's, I think, pretty straightforward as far as piers can go, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
John, have you received the DEP number?
I can look at that on my other screen as we carry on here.
Okay, because we have not received the DEP number. So what happened to this application, then we probably have to do a continuance if we don't have a DEP number. So question from the commissioner.
When?
John?
Tom, are you going to refer to the letter from the marine fisheries? I mean, from the biologist?
Yes, I can do that now.
Yeah, I thought maybe you should enter that into the record, and I have a question related to that when you're done.
Okay. We have received a comment letter from DMF. The letter is dated January the 5th. And there's 4 points that I want to read. One, The new pier has the potential to negatively impact nearby shellfish resources and fishery in a variety of ways. While some of these impacts can be avoided or reduced with best management practices, others are unavoidable and will result in permanent impacts to shellfish habitat and associated fisheries as access. Support piles will directly displace shellfish habitat, and piles may cause further indirect impacts that negatively affect bordering shellfish habitat. Leachate from any pressure-treated woods used for support piles or decking may also negatively impact nearby shellfish. Associated boating activity could result in prop dredging if the boat is installed in insufficient water depth in a water depths relative to the size of the vessel using the structure. The support pile floats and adjacent footprints will likely not be accessible to commercial or recreational fishery. 2. The ground floats can disturb bottom sediments, resulting in turbidity and direct impacts to benthic habitat. To minimize impacts, Massachusetts DMF recommends that the bottom of a proposed float be at least 2.5 feet above the substrates over mapped shellfish habitat at mean low water. It is unclear if the float is proposed would maintain this minimum clearance at mean low water. DMF recommending extending the float into deeper water or installing a float stop to maintain 2.5 feet clearance above the substrate at mean low water if this minimum depth buffer is not being met at the proposed float locations. Third, any activities requiring a barge should be restricted to 2 hours before and after high tide to prevent barge grounding in mapped shellfish habitat. Fourth, the fuel spills from refilling of the construction equipment will adversely impact sensitive resource area. Impacts to resource area can be avoided by prohibiting all land-based equipment from being refueled on site. If equipment is refueled on site, adequate containment and cleaner material should be required to minimize the impacts. We also have a shellfish report by our town biologist. This is dated January the 6th. I'm just going to read a couple of sentences for you. On page 2, under the additional comments, the proposed project is located within North Bay, DMF SC 23.3, and is designated as conditionally approved currently in the open status. The area is rated 10 out of 10 by 2011 Habitat Assessment Group. This area has access from shores for recreational shell fishery and is a common place to harvest soft shell clams during the open seasons. Soft shell clams populations are also found subtidally, making this area conducive to pumping for commercial shell fishery. With the bottom of the North Bay continuing to be compromised with additional stresses and productive area becoming more important to protect, this is one of those areas to protect. Few houses are left in the North Bay without piers, and North Bay is reaching build-out capacity. Since this habitat is so valuable, 10 out of 10, a pier would impact the shell fishery in these locations and alter the habitat of the area. Considering the maximum depth of the pier is 2.5 feet on the average low tide, there are times where a minus low tide, the flow would hardly be above the sediment and has potential to sit at the bottom. Each time the floats go down as the tide comes back in it will create a suction and alter the sediment below the scouring out of the area by the floats. 131 feet pier is very long and destructive just to reach 2.5 feet of water when sediment of the area is sandy and hard, allowing for easy water access from the shore to use the kayak or the dinghies. The level of the harm to the habitat far outweighs any benefits. John.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's kind of what I was focusing on. John, could you describe exactly what the float would be and answer a question for me? When you're at mean low, not mean low, but mean low, which happens, of course, pretty frequently, will this float bottom out?
We have the pie chart up here to note what the difference is between mean low and mean low low. Mean low low is only about 3/10 below of a foot below mean low water. So at low tide, at mean low tide, there would still be about 2.2 feet underneath this float. So
Is it your opinion that that float would not bottom out even at mean low low? And does the float have stops on it, or is there a need for stops?
I was looking at that on my plan. We did not indicate stops because of that water depth. They could certainly be, could certainly be added to the plan if there was.
Thank you, John.
Before I go on, John, under description on your application, when we have the checklist, under that checklist, you mentioned that there is a flow stop 12-inch above, but the drawing doesn't show that. Trust me, I read the application.
Well, I clearly don't think that float stops are needed to provide 12 inches when we have over 2 feet at mean low low, but we could certainly incorporate float stops to whatever the recommended separation is.
Okay. Bill?
I actually thought that the letter from the town shellfish biologist was kind of compelling, and the idea of the float bottoming out concerned me. But I was then thinking, well, what about float stops? And I had to admit to myself, I didn't know exactly what a float stop was. My understanding is that you basically are welding or otherwise attaching 4 legs to the bottom of the dock so the thing does not literally lie on the bottom at low tide. And then I thought about that, and I thought, well, that means that when the water, every time that the water is down, you're basically banging the substrate with these float stops. And I thought, is that a good thing? I thought, well, we have normally been approving floats for motorized boats, and you would put a float stop on it. Yeah, whatever. But this is not for a motorized boat. This is for non-motorized. It's for kayaks, canoes, or what have you. And then I thought about, in my short tenure of almost 3 years, whenever we end up having it seems like every one that's a non-motorized dock, we generally go along, yeah, okay, it's fine, because it's in a really muddy place. And I can think of a couple of places, I think y'all can think of the places we've approved where it's really muddy and yeah, it's kind of a mess. They try to put a kayak in and you're going to get all mucked up doing that. The thing that really interested me about Liz Lewis's letter was she said, yeah, but this is hard packed sand. What is the point of putting in a 121-foot dock and float system when all you're doing is using non-motorized craft, i.e. kayaks, and you can just slide your boat into the water? And as a kayaker, and I do a lot of that, it's kind of like, yeah, what do you need a dock for? So I'm left wondering, do we really need a dock? Does this make sense? And might the potential impacts to recreational shellfishing access around the float or under the dock or what have you, does this work just for a kayak dock? And I'm not so sure. I do have a question. Maybe it's for George or for John. Float stops, am I right? Is it nothing more than basically 4 legs that's on the bottom of the float? And doesn't that cause some kind of turbulence and bouncing up and down on the substrate, which is detriment?
I can answer that, Bill. So the float stops that we use, as you notice, this float is supported by four by four posts. So you put an eye bolt in on each post, up like 6 or 8 feet, and you run a chain down to the float so that when the float goes down, the float does not descend any more than X amount. So there are not actually legs on the bottom of the float. The float nothing ever touches the substrate.
But I mean, where are the legs? The legs, the
There
floats?
aren't any legs. No, there aren't any legs. So if you look at the float, and you see on either end of the float, there are 2 sets of 4x4 posts that support the float. So up high on those 4x4 posts, you put an eye bolt in them. You run a chain down to the float at all 4 points.
I get it. So it's a fixed mounted pole that the thing is sliding up and down on. Is that?
No, it's not a fixed pole, but the chain, so once it goes down to a certain elevation, the chain does not allow the float to go any further. So literally, if you had an extreme low tide, that float could be out of water.
Yeah.
Supported by those chains.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So just looking at the drawing if you look at the post, I mean, if you look at the floats, there are 4 posts. Is that 4 10 inches diameter piles to hold the float.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's not a 4. 4 is basically a seasonal pier. It's a 4-inch diameter piles. So. Pete?
Yes, actually, while Miss Dr. Hearn, you actually were impressed with our town shellfish biologist letter, I was struck by our State Department of Marine Fisheries. It's one of the most negative, least supportive of a pier dock situation I think I've ever read from them.
Yeah, me too.
I was holy mackerel, I can't believe this has come from the state. But what I do want to bring out is a series of concerns. Of course, we have significant shellfish habitat here for both soft shell and hard shell clams. It noted that both recreational and commercial fisheries are taking advantage of this within the footprint of this dock, and just off 20 feet, there were commercial draggers for quahogs recently. There is eelgrass potential in here that our state warned about. There is winter flounder habitat that this resides on. I mean, that's a trifecta that I have not seen our state list in a negative assessment of the placement of a dock and pier in our waters. What struck me is this repeated statement. Every effort should be made to protect habitat, or every effort should be made to avoid impacts to eelgrass, or every effort should be made to lessen any kind of impact on the winter flounder populations. So, what the state said is that there are unavoidable negative impacts that this dock will have on shellfish resources and fisheries. The very act of putting this pier out limits access to the area under the dock, to the area underneath the float. It displaces prime habitat with its placement of piles in the habitat. All the while, and it is what Liz Lewis said, is you've got a good shore for launching, I'm assuming, non-motorized craft, but I will ask the applicant's agent, specifically, what kind of non-motorized craft might the owners of this property be interested in for this dock?
Would have to defer to the applicants themselves who are here, but I would say, on top of just kayaks, there's certainly non-motorized dinghies. We are in North Bay. There are mooring fields around it. Could be sailing skiffs. but if he's willing to share more on that, I'm happy to let him do so.
Yeah, so this is Lee Barbieri. I'm actually happy to share. So I think the concept, much like we've had in other homes, is we've have dinghies as well as a laser sailboat. And I would foresee that we would apply for a mooring so that we would have a boat that was out in the mooring field. I think the other part, and maybe this isn't part of what is even considered, but I've actually swum in that area, and it's not hard packed right in front of the house. It's actually quite mucky, and if you have a group of people that you're trying to get into a dinghy, it's not so easy to drag it across the shore. And the other piece that I'm sure maybe has nothing to do with this, but I'll tell you that we kind of foresaw that this would also be a place, instead of walking across the base of that shoreline out, because it's relatively shallow on the way out, is we would use that to access for, to swim, for instance. So that's how we foresaw how it would be used. We've never had a large boat. We have no intention of having a large boat. But we certainly, would love the opportunity to have a pier. As we kind of looked at all of the properties that are here, and I know it's not the reason for doing one. This is literally the last home on the entire island that doesn't have a pier. And I understand that's not the reason for doing it, but the concept of being able to, bring guests out across a pier out to a little landing was very appealing, and that's why we started this process.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple more things to be following.
Sure, go ahead.
If this dock will potentially serve a moored boat, as the applicant shared with us, it is quite possible that this boat would be motorized. And while the dock is not, quote, for motorized vessels, I think it would be almost impossible to keep a motorized boat from coming up and picking up guests or things from there. A laser, and again, I'm not totally familiar with a laser, but my thought was that a laser is a fairly small single-masted sailboat that doesn't have a lot of weight. I certainly know kayaks, canoes, and I thought small sailboats, which would be conducive for sailing up in North Bay, are very movable by a single individual on a shoreline that has reasonable strength to its surface. Our shellfish biologist observes that North Bay is reaching build out, and certainly Mr. Barbieri, is looking all around him, and he's seeing docks, and yeah. And I know that Commissioner Abadili is very familiar with the trend in water quality and shellfishing within the Three Bays area. He lives up there and motors out to go fin fishing on a regular basis. So when our shellfish biologist comes again with a fairly strong negative assessment of this, that habitat harm far outweighs benefits, this commissioner, with his PhD in oceanography, specializing in nearshore biogeochemistry, I'm going to pretty much, I think, side with the negative assessments by both DMF and our shellfish biologist. I would have a hard time supporting this dock when something can be launched similarly from shore. It's a very long dock. A lot of mud surface or sediment surface is going to be taken up by both the dock footprint and underneath the float, making it much less accessible for both shellfishing, commercial and recreational. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Pete. Louise?
Let's see. I was comparing the shellfish surveys, one from Mr. Ryan, who was working with John O'Day and the applicant, and Miss Lewis. And both of them agree that the area underneath the dock is going to be, is conducive to shellfish growth and reproduction. The data from Mr. Ryan doesn't really show much activity in terms of presence of soft-shelled clams or quahogs. Whereas Ms. Lewis's data says there are 4.5 animals specifically 4.5 soft-shelled clams per square foot, which is a lot of soft-shelled clams. Plus, I think at least twice the number of quahogs that Mr. Ryan found. And in fact, that was a minimum because she was unable, because it was not a good low tide, she was unable to actually, I think, well, no, I'm sorry, that had to do with the soft-shelled clams. But my point is that if you look at Mr. Ryan's data versus Ms. Lewis's data, there's a big discrepancy there. And I mentioned that not specific, well, I mentioned it specifically to this application, but also just in general. I wonder why there should be such a huge discrepancy between the results between two people who did an analysis on exactly the same area. They set up a grid which was nearly identical as far as I could see reading the application. So, John, given Mr. Ryan's analysis, are you acknowledging that this is a 10, rated a 10, or where do you stand on that?
It was not our intention to debate that this is rated as a 10. We were not here to argue about the shellfish maps.
Okay, so to that. Well, I think a 4.5 density per square foot of soft-shelled clams is a pretty high number. One thing I would say, however, is that if you think about what life is going to be over there without some sort of a pier, I hate to think of families and guests walking across those soft-shelled clam beds back and forth and dragging boats back and forth. Maybe something shorter that would protect that area would be worth thinking about, as opposed to a 100-foot dock that is being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. George, your hand's up.
Yes, it is. I guess I first start by saying I know what Dennis would say about this pier, and folks that have been on the board when Dennis Houle was on the board and was our chairman, and then later on the clerk, and was on the board for almost 20 years, I believe, would have said, and if I'm wrong, I can be corrected, but he would have said this, as he did in the Centerville dock that we ended up turning down, but he would have said this dock meets our regulations to a T, and I don't know how we can possibly not approve it. So that's number one. The second thing I want to say is I know David Ryan personally, And there's no more honest person in the world than David Ryan. He's been in the oyster industry for 25 years, in the shellfish industry for 25 years. He raises oysters, and is, as far as the discrepancy goes, I can't explain it, Louise, but I have the utmost faith in David Ryan. Let's not forget this is a seasonal pier. Winter flounder, it's a seasonal pier. It's coming out. So that's I just wanted to throw all that out. Thank you.
If I could just comment on the shellfish surveys.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
If I could just comment on the shellfish surveys, I have Dave Ryan's in front of us. I don't see that he actually indicates a per square foot, so it's hard to compare the town's estimated for per square foot versus a survey that doesn't actually, he's just giving the facts. Here's how many I found.
Right. But the 4.5 per square foot is based on absolute numbers. And there was like, I don't know, a 7 or 8-fold difference in the soft-shelled clams. I'm not disputing that Mr. Ryan found what he reported. I'm not disputing that at all. What I'm saying is that there is a heck of a lot of variability in results from people who analyzed the same areas, and we ought to recognize that. That's all. People went in there, they surveyed the area, they made their counts, that's fine, but there was a lot of variability, and we need to think about that.
And if I could just bring my screen back up to, I think I also have the aerial open here, just to take the wider view of this. I think it's also important to point out that the Pier 2R immediately to our east was approved by this commission around 2016. So that is under the same current pier regulations. I believe it was the same. Yes, if our maps go back to 2011, this is the same shellfish rating. I think that the comments from DMF, I think that if we scroll through a year's worth of comments, recommendations, and I have it on my other screen, 2 weeks before for something on Bay Street, exact same conditions, comments. I understand that this is a significant shellfish area. I think that the commission understood that there are significant shellfish areas when they wrote their pier regulations, and I think that they took that into account in writing those. I think the regulations are meant to weigh all the things that are pulling on the resource, including the homeowners, and so I think that we've open to discussions here, but I think that the regs took a lot of this into account too. So,
John, before you go on this property map that you're showing, what are those two piers right next to these property? Are they permanent or seasonal?
They are seasonal as well.
Okay. So I just want to make one comment before I go back. So looking at our biologist's report, my thinking is, how much water do you need for this pier? And like George said, Dennis keep reminding us this meet the regulation and stuff like that. But in reality, how much water depth do you need for your kayaks? And can we pull back the piers to reduce the length and then maybe even the float? And that may solve the problem. So, but I just want to flow it out there. So, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I have absolutely no problem with the consultant's survey that they've done. I think both sides, Liz Lewis versus the consultant, both recognize this as a 10 out of 10. And Liz Lewis's survey suggests it's a 12 out of 10 with that kind of density of clams. That being said, it's a really long dock for a non-motorized craft. And the idea of just being able to, set your kayak in, all you need is, like whatever, 5 inches of water, and you can glide on out from there. And I understand that, this property is like the last of the last to not have a dock. Everyone's got a dock. But, I would only say, and, I don't know if this is a good thing to say or not, but if I had that property, I would be really proud to not have a dock there. And that here we are with a tremendous, the best of the best habitat for clams. Tom, your comment about trying to shorten it. I mean, you need to have a float. You need to go, that far out for non-motorized craft. This is. I remember the Hool arguments that happened, and it precedes my tenure. That was talking about motorized craft. I was talking about, well, you've got to have, if it's 30 inches, it's got the 30 inches. How can we oppose it? But this is a different can of worms. You're talking about a non-motorized craft for kayaks, where you end up having essentially a place where you could just launch right off the shore. So I don't know that it's consistent with the old model of approving any dock that meets our guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. John?
Yeah, interesting listening to all the other commissioners and the analysis. Having been one of the authors of those guidelines, regulations actually, some time ago, and having been on the commission, I'm impressed with a couple of things. Pete, I some disagreement because I have seen Division of Marine Fisheries letters over the many years have been involved that are very similar to what was sent. I've seen letters from our town biologists, both current and prior biologists, with similar statements. So I don't think that either of those are any less or more compelling than what we've seen in many other applications. Second feeling I have, Bill, I can understand from your thinking that you'd be proud to not have a dock, but obviously this isn't your property. This is the applicant's, and he's asking for the dock. So I kind of, that's where we're going. That's all.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I do think.
I get it.
Let John finish.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, let me call you back in 5 minutes. I do think that we have to look at all of the other docks approved in that area. This is probably the last one that we're going to see in this area. We drafted regulations to apply to these situations. This clearly complies with all of those regulations. How do we say we've approved the one to the left, the one to the right, the one over there, and the one over there, exact same situations, but we're going to consider denying this one? I would think that would be the definition of arbitrary and capricious, and that would really frighten me from a legal point of view and a consistency and a fairness point of view. So to me, I kind of agree with George here when I'm saying that I just don't see the grounds, legal grounds or scientific grounds in this case, for denying this application. I think if John wanted to consider, or the applicant wanted to consider somewhat shortening it, fine. I think when we looked at the float and the comments made, especially by Liz on the float, that is not a concern the way George Gilmore clearly clarified that matter, that understanding of its design. So honestly, fellow commissioners, I just have really a lot of trouble understanding how we could ever deny this application and have it sustained on any reasonable basis by a court and certainly by the state.
Thank you, John. Pete?
So, John, could you please share, working off of with a ruler and or possibly that aerial that you had, an estimation of the length of the dock to the east and the length of the dock to the west, so that I could look at this 130-ish foot dock in relationship to what's already there?
So we did have this on the plan that showed that we were being shorter than those. But I can also pull up, it's a little bit hard because the person to our left seawall's a little bit further in, but if I estimate, the same shoreline somewhere in here, I can bring up, hold on, where's I have tools in here somewhere. Here we go. Few.
Because the suggestion of a shorter dock with float stops, so you still have at least hopefully 18 inches or 20 inches to sediment surface, because that dock to the east looks significantly shorter than 130 feet.
So to our west from the seawall,
that's a long dock.
Our elevation is 142.
Right, that's a long dock.
Let me try to do the one to our right, and I think that their seawall is pretty similar alignment. I don't know why it shrinks like that. I'm sorry.
But it's more not from the seawall, John. It's from mean low water. So please, John, mean low water. I'm really not interested in the seawall.
Actually, I can probably do mean low water from our plan.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Better.
Because it's about 100 feet, I think, on this application from mean low water. So that one to the east, which is much shorter, the two to the east actually are much shorter. And for a non-motorized dock, it's, and the fact that both the piles and the float are limiting access to shell fishermen, both commercial and recreational, a shorter dock is most certainly better.
I'm working on a good length for us.
And I think, fellow commissioners, we have every right to address the length of a dock legally.
I can also tell you that the two docks to the right, the one that's even a little bit shorter, is a motorized dock, and that actually has more water in front of it. The one immediately to the east of this dock has slightly more water, and I can't remember. I can't remember whether that's a motorized dock or not, but that's my recollection.
Pete, when my comments, if I could jump in, Tom, for one second. Pete, I don't disagree that discussing the length of the dock is absolutely legitimate. I would not disagree with your statement on that, Peter.
Yeah.
Coming up with the pier to our east, maybe being more in the range of 60, 70 feet. Based on, I have their bulkhead plan open. I don't have their pier plan, but that's, from the seaward side of the marsh, which is probably a pretty good indicator of mean low.
Okay, so it's approximately 60 to 70 feet from the mean low water.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, John. Angela.
Yeah, I just wanted to put in my 2 cents quickly that I'm not sure moving forward, how many more times are we going to see a score of 10? And I'm having a hard time getting past that the level of harm for this habitat far outweighs any benefit. So I got to say that I'm really siding with what Pete said and Bill said, and I'm not really keen on this project for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Louise?
You said that we are missing the SE number, right?
Yes.
So given that we're going to have a continuance anyway, wouldn't that be an opportunity to find out what the lengths of these docks really are, and also which ones are dinghy docks and which ones are motorized? And then we would really be dealing with the full deck of information. Because we're going to have to continue again.
Yes, John can compile that information. The other things too, if we are taking a continuous, John can discuss with the applicants what is the chances of reducing the length of the pier and the floats. So that can come back too, because we have to take a continuous anyway without the SE3 numbers. So
if he's willing to take a continuance on that basis, that's the applicant's choice.
I understand, but we still have to take a
yeah, I understand that. There's just difference.
Yeah.
The other thing is, just for the benefit of the applicants, I have a float, a dock with a float, and I am also a kayaker. And let me tell you, it is horrible getting out of a kayak onto a float. The level is different enough that you really need to coordinate with a ladder, and it's not so easy. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Louise.
So I know that this has gone on a little bit, but I think that I can answer some of those questions. I know that the piers immediately to our west and east are both non-motorized piers. Again, I think this was 2016. This wasn't too much longer before that. We have discussed with the applicant and I think would consider shortening this pier. I think that we're getting some mixed comments. We have DMF saying we should go out further to get it out into more water, and we have natural resources saying that we probably shouldn't have one at all. So it's hard to just send us off cold on that. I think that we have looked at this, and I think that 20 feet shorter would still get us even more inside of the line of these, get us closer to the neighbors, probably piers heading to our east, still get us 2 feet under the float at low tide. I don't know whether that's the range that the commission is looking for. I think would need, would look for a little bit more guidance, I think, on shortening.
George.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, John, my comment would be, you're at minus 2.9 now. It looks like there's a minus 2.1 back a little bit. I don't know if we could pull that float back to that minus 2 or 2.5 thereabouts. The other comment would be, it is a 10 by 20 float, and I don't know if we could go to an 8 by 16 float. I know where our bylaw says you can have 200 square feet, but maybe, an 8 by 16 might be more appropriate for a dinghy dock, and that would, I think, go a long way to hopefully satisfying them.
I think that we're certainly open to that as well. And as you were looking at these lengths and the other soundings, it's pretty easy to get a sense of the how much shortening that would be, because we're right next to, a 10-foot float and a 10-foot ramp. So, 10 feet shorter would get the middle of the float smack in the 2.5. 20 feet shorter would get the center of that float smack in the 2.1. We're open to that.
For my thinking is, I'm thinking of close to 2 feet water depths. So if you can prove it to the 2 feet, that would be satisfy me. But
Yeah, the other thing would be to show those load stops on your plan, John.
Right.
And would you like to see those at 1 or 2 or 2? 2.5 gets to be more difficult if we shorten it to 2, but 1.5.
We've always said 1 and agreed on 1. I think 1 would be sufficient.
Yeah, no, agree.
So if John was willing to make those, or the applicant was willing to make those changes, we can move on this tonight, Tom?
Yeah.
If my question is, I think that we would be open to those 3 suggested changes: shortening 20 feet so that the center of the float's at that 2.1 marker, float stops at a foot, and a 8x16 float. I think that those would all be amenable to the applicant if it worked for the commission.
All right.
Do you want to check with your applicants on this?
He's here, and he could say he disagrees with me if he wants.
Okay.
I guess.
Let me go to the public comment. Channel 18. Any public comment on this? Channel 18. David?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. So you okay with those conditions?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that we are okay with those conditions. The applicant is also, a little bit would like to have an understanding. Doesn't want to see us get denied. So no. I don't know whether, and I know that this is a sensitive area, and we may not get some of you, but I don't know whether we can get a straw vote on whether these changes get us to an end.
So, John, if we made a motion subject to receipt of a revised plan with those 3 changes on it, that would be the motion, and then you'd see how the vote would go, John, right?
Right.
I would,
yeah.
But if it doesn't pass, then it fails.
Oh, okay.
Or does it keep it open? Or does it keep it open to discussion of different revisions?
Well, then, Tom, can we take a straw vote?
Yeah, let's just pull the commission and see how we go from there. If we are voting for those changes, shortening the piers by 20 feet and then reducing the float size to 8x16. And adding the flow stop at 1 foot above the benthic level. George?
Abedili?
I would vote in favor of that.
Foster?
I would vote in favor of that.
Gilmore would vote in favor. Hearn?
I'm on a razor's edge, to tell you the truth.
No such thing, Bill.
I don't, it goes back to need, it's like, is this a necessary thing? I mean, it just, I hear Abedili's comment about the legality and but it is a habitat. There's a habitat issue there. And it's like, I'm going to have to say I would, oh God. I guess if you make those changes, I would vote with it. Yes, I would.
Lee?
Yes.
Magny?
No.
Sampu?
It doesn't matter. You got 5.
I take that as a no.
That's a no from me. Yeah.
I'm just going to say again,
Yeah.
And
So
I have to play lawyer. Please forgive me, Angela and Pete, but we've got these regulations, and there has to be some very, very specific reasons why we would vote against this. Otherwise, we're just going to be back in court. The town's going to be fighting it, and we're going to lose. And that's going back to the 20 years ago when we used to do things.
I understand, John, I really do, but I don't know when we start moving forward and when we know better, we should do better. I don't know how many 10s we're going to get. And I put a lot of weight in the shellfish biologist. So I have to, with my conscience, vote this down. That's all.
I respect that, Angela. I really, really, really do. But again, maybe you go back and rewrite the regulations or doing something differently. But we wrote the regulations. That's what's in effect now. That's what guides us. And it really scares me going forward not to recognize that. That's all. And please, I absolutely respect where you're coming from. So forgive me. That's all.
So apart from that, I'll do a vote later. But John, for a continuance with the DEP number, I'm looking at 16th of January. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the shortening of the pier by 20 feet with the floor reduced the size to 8 by 16 with the 1 foot flow stop above the substrate, and a continuance date to January the 16th for the DEP number.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Nay.
Sampu.
No.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Good luck, John, and good luck, Lee. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you. We have, let's see, we have 6 certificate of compliance, but I have to break it up into 2 groups. The first group is roof down sink SE3-323, Wayne Kirker, Hyannis Marina, SE3-4217, Wayne Kirkus, Hyannis Marina, SE3-4771, Wayne Kirkus, Dockside Marina, SE3-52X7, and Barry G. Morris, SE3-5827. Can I have a motion to approve this 5 certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangney.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
The 6th certificate of compliance, there's a little bit complex. I just want to explain it to you. Under the SE33958, this is we can issue the COC under the local ordinances because this project is under the state superseded order. Therefore, the applicant has to apply to the state for the COC under the Wetland Protection Act. The scope under this SE33958 has been broken up into different parts under different SE3 numbers. So the only thing that is under this SE3 number is the dredgings in the surrounding the dockside marina under this COC. So could I have a motion to approve this COC for the SE33958?
Tom, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
You just confused me. What anybody else? So what you're saying is we're sort of half approving half of this project, but not all of it?
Under the scope, all the components, I kind of did it under a different SE3 number. They broke it out.
Oh.
So the only activity under here is the dredging surrounding the dockside marina.
Okay, so this number just covers that piece of work, and that's
Correct.
what we're approving?
Right.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Sorry for my confusion.
The local ordinance, not the state, because that is under the state superseded order. That's why the applicant has to go to the state applying for the Wetland Protection Net, COC.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you. Sorry for my confusion.
That's okay.
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
We have two sets of minutes, December the 12th and December the 19th.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
Abadili.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Our next hearing is at 3 p.m. on January the 16th. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call.
Abadili,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. We are adjourned at 7:41.